this edition of the deep dive on seeking clarity. My name is Aaron Mashano. I'm the facilitator and head coach here at Start Results Coaching. So excited to share this new deep dive around this usually, I guess, elusive but very important aspect of startups and building your business, because it highlights this pain point that most people feel, which is confusion and overwhelm in their business. Questions like what to do next, where to start, where to focus, are all very important questions, and I guess led to this opportunity to do some research around maybe some key areas that help peak performers seek clarity better and hopefully more effectively in a quicker time frame to stop the paralysis that may occur from confusion. So I hope you're just as excited as I am to sharing this, because I think this is something that may help. So let's get straight into it. So we're going to go on a bit of a journey where we're going to discuss what is clarity. We're going to discuss where to start. What do you look for in terms of framework that can help you get more clarity? We're going to also talk about seeking clarity effectively, like what are the ways or what are the questions that you can ask yourself and maybe others that can help you to get more, I guess, confident about the approach of how you go about making sense of things when you're feeling overwhelmed or, I guess, slowing down or nerves or fear or whatever. And then we're going to talk about how to actually measure yourself near the end. Okay, so let's talk about clarity. What is clarity? We all use that word quite well. We all ask for clarity. Even in my coaching, that's one of the main questions I get from people seeking help. But what is the actual definition of clarity? So I went ahead and went to the dictionary and found out that clarity is actually the quality of coherence and intelligibility. This was probably the best definition I could find, because what I like about it is it has these three powerful words. First is quality, second is coherence, third is intelligibility. So let's talk about coherence and intelligibility first. I think if you're coherent, it's usually when you're communicating, if you think of an example, talking to somebody else, and not about what you're saying, but the fact that the other person is receiving that information and it's comprehensive enough for them to understand. So a lot of that in clarity is coming back to the connection with quality, which is, how can we take information that out there in the marketplace, but like a radio, fine-tuned to find the right channel so that you can hear, comprehend, and hopefully action certain things. And that brings me to the intelligibility aspect of this definition, which is, I think intelligence isn't necessarily an IQ of remembering things, but I think intelligence is the application of knowledge. That's being able to take some data, translate it in a usable way, be able to then communicate it to others, or be able to then action it for yourself and feel empowered, feel capable, and feel competent in that execution based on information you received. So if we're looking at that as a simple guideline of what clarity is, then it actually, if you can see, involves about three criteria in this definition. And then I guess I'd like you to ask yourself, did you know this definition? And is this what you mean when you're seeking clarity from others or from certain situations? So it just really brings up a little bit of interesting discussion for you to think about how you use that word, yeah? So where do we actually start now that we're thinking, okay, so let me give you an example. Let's just say you are a little bit overwhelmed right now. You've got all this information, you've watched all the TED Talks on business, you've seen Simon Sinek, maybe Find Your Why or whatever, and you're like, well, where the hell do I actually start? I don't know where to start, because all this information is probably making you paralyzed and confused. So I suggest that we look at, when you're looking to seek clarity, always try and think about things in these 6 areas. The first one, do you actually know yourself? What does that mean? Are you aware of who you are, kind of how you're coming to that situation, where you are in a situation of getting information about before you make a decision? Because it usually starts from yourself, because if you have better understanding of yourself, you're more likely to know how to better understand the external environment. Does that make sense? The second is social. Are you clear about how you interact in social situations? Because this is very important, and obviously more so in business. Number 3, what skills do you bring to the table? Do you know how valuable you are in the marketplace? Are you aware of some of these skill sets? Because if you're not, then very, very important to start to ask yourself those questions, because these things can help you in terms of understanding and being more clear with yourself, particularly around the areas of quality and intelligibility. Fourth, are you clear about the sort of service that you can offer in your business and in your life? Have you ever given that some thought? Fifth is feelings. How do you generally feel on a day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year? Are you aware of your feelings? Are you also in control of your feelings? This is really important conversations to have. And then the sixth and most interesting one that I've researched more on, particularly recently, is what level of meaningfulness are you getting from the things that you're doing around your life and in your business? Because most cases, the people that are living more meaningful lives tend to be very clear about the things that make them happy. Does that make sense? So think about these six things, and let's dive more into detail around these six things, and hopefully this can help you start to use some references on how to get clear. So one of the reasons I love this one about clarity about self is, if you imagine this person's on, I think it's a beautiful costume that they're wearing. You can see that they've got a mask on, but behind that mask is obviously a person. And I think in society, too often now, we've all been taught how to behave in situations as a son, as a father, as a wife, as a business person, as a employee, etc., that we wear all these masks, and that's not bad or good. It's just over time, if you wear all of them too long, but have never really asked yourself who you are behind all those faces that you wear, it starts to become a little bit confusing. Do you understand what I mean? So here are some of signals that you can elicit or hear from yourself that may trigger that you're ready to start thinking about things differently, or you're in this confusion point, and that is good for you to maybe take stock of yourself and start to assess who you are, okay, or other people in this case. So one of the questions that came up for me when I was in a very difficult situation, challenged and confused and overwhelmed, is I started asking myself this thing when I was about to try and make a big move or make a transition in my career, and this question came up. So, is all the complexity I've created in my life even worth it? I was at a stage where I was reasonably successful, I think, in the past, putting in some crazy hours in meetings, going all over the place, but a lot of it was burning me out. I wasn't very fulfilled. So I started asking myself that question. Second one that popped up is this the right direction for me at this stage in my life? Guys, I can tell you right now that in most cases we say we want success, we want to go after the big stuff in life, and yet our day-to-day life is probably showing that it values different things. So I'm not saying that you can't have your cake and eat it, but what I am saying though is that some career choices or some ambitious goals that you might be chasing may be steering you off in the wrong direction at this particular stage in your life, when you maybe will be more fulfilled doing something different. So I'd like you to really ask yourself the question about some of the necessary activities that you need to do that may, for example, help you succeed in business. But the bigger question is this the right direction for you right now? Because this is really, really important to ask. Next is, things are good. So if I try something new, will everyone think I'm crazy? I can't tell you how many people I meet, at least at the top level in business, who are doing reasonably well, or at least doing better than most people. At this level, I call it good. And if you've been to any of my talks, I talk about the enemy of a great life is a good one. Most of us who are good, one of our biggest enemies is everyone around us is telling us we're good. But we ourselves can get very frustrated, very itchy, because we think we can achieve more. But the bigger question is, people can maybe be in front of us when we say, oh, look, I want to make some more money, I want to make this big move. Your partner, spouse, friend, or whoever will say, man, come on, aren't you grateful enough for what you've already achieved? You've already worked enough. This is good, guys, for the average 85% of the population. But for peak performers, it doesn't mean that we're not satisfied with what we have. It's just we're always constantly seeking to grow. This is a completely different mindset. And I want you to be careful if you are in the situation where everyone's telling you good, but you can, at least in yourself, feel you can do a little bit more, to not benchmark yourself with the average person, because they probably aren't peak performers. Okay, so that's food for thought. So in some cases, you might be already working really, really hard, and then you're feeling maybe a little bit stretched. So can you really take on more at this stage in your life? And this is a very interesting question because there's sometimes for some people, I'd say probably 60 to 70% of people I work with, they come from a scarcity mindset in most cases where they're fearful that if they take on something more, they'll overstretch and then they'll burn out. The truth of the matter is, guys, most of us don't have a burnout problem. We have an alignment problem. So before I even go into saying, hey, listen, you should do it and grow your capacity, I start saying, well, what is it about you that's making you feel stretched right now versus feeling excited about the growth? Because these are two different intentions. Does that make sense? So be careful when you're avoiding growth or avoiding a big move in your business because you fear you're going to burn out based on some past experience, when the reality is maybe this stretched out feeling is coming from a place where you're not aligned in the current career or position or things that you're doing. And it's not about changing it, but it's just about having that honest conversation with yourself. And again, like I said, this is for advanced learners. So the question there is, are you aligned in the initial stages as to why you're feeling pretty spread out? Because if you get more aligned, you get excited about growth to the next level. Okay, then the next question there is, am I really good enough to play at the next level? Oftentimes, a lot of us were quite competitive, compare ourselves to other people, seeing how they're probably doing things, quote unquote, effortlessly, when the reality is every future step is always going to feel uncomfortable at the beginning. Every bigger move is always going to take you outside your comfort zone. This is okay, but it does bring up some emotions of feeling inadequate and feeling insecure. That is fine, but you just have to at least ask yourself that question about, so if you do start to ask yourself that question, maybe it's time to start thinking about making that shift. Okay, because these are clues. Next, why do my relationships feel sort of blah? And I can't tell you how many times, and some of you know this, I don't give relationship advice, but I find that business affects everything. That is important. And all I can say is, in a lot of cases, have you noticed, you may, for example, buy a laptop or phone, very excited for a short period of time, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months later, doesn't even hit the fulfillment level. Why is that? Because some of these things are just kind of stuff. But in a relationship, without giving too much relationship advice, I would strongly recommend that you start asking yourself the question, if you're a peak performer, if you're feeling blah about about your relationship, maybe the bigger question is, when was the last time you had conversations with your partner, client, friend about growth? Have you been growing in that relationship? And most likely, in most cases, when things tend to stagnate, it's because the relationships aren't growing. So it's not an opportunity necessarily to terminate the relationship, but it's very important, if you are this way inclined, to start asking some honest conversations. Okay, and then obviously this can lead to a lot of different situations. When you are confused, it leads to lack of confidence, and then this leads to lack of performance, and on we go. So this is always a problem for some people, most people actually, particularly if you get to this good level and you start to plateau. So when you start asking yourself and feeling this way about things, it's probably a good time for you to signal that it's time to maybe ask some more self-reflection questions to realign with yourself before you start addressing the external environment. Okay, so clarity research actually tells us that successful people know answers to these certain fundamental questions. So test yourself on this. Number one, so get your journal out and start writing, yeah? So, who am I? Do you know the answer to this fundamental question? And if you're sort of delaying and not too sure somewhat, then maybe it's an opportunity for you to work on it. Number two, what do you actually value? Guys, I'm coming to understand that success in business without really understanding what fulfills you in life is a very unhappy and unsuccessful life existence. Why? Because what makes me feel valuable is probably going to be completely different to yours. So the danger with getting some lists from these self-help books and stuff like that is they're probably good as guidelines, but not as instructions. So really start to spend time with yourself to ask yourself the question, what is it that you actually value? And can you list those things? Number three, what are the strengths and weaknesses that you have? Because one of the best things you can do for yourself, guys, is there's only 24 hours in the day. And I think some of the most successful people do is they lean on their strengths the most, and then they get and seek help with other people in terms of some of their weaknesses. So a lot of people who are very aware of the strengths and weaknesses tend to do better in the long term in life because they're spending time in their place where they perform at the highest capacity and feel more confident. So the chances are, if you're not clear about your strengths and weaknesses, you might put yourself in some very difficult situations that make you confused. Does that make sense? So be careful and be aware of that. Next one. What are my goals? Have you asked yourself lately what are your goals? So obviously here I'm talking about what are your end goals, not necessarily your medium, short, long-term goals, because that can sometimes get a bit confusing. But what are the things that are really you're working towards long-term that are going to make you happy, fulfilled, successful, etc., whatever that means to you, and then you work backwards from there. So I hope that makes a difference. Then most importantly, because you know where we are when it comes to coaching, it's the one thing to write down your goals, oh happy and Larry, but what is your actual execution plan? Do you have a step-by-step process of how you're going to be able to accomplish your goals? Because if you don't, then you have to be honest with yourself, my friends. You're just living an elusive life, an illusion, because without the plans, then you're just going to be floating around, okay, and get disappointed ultimately. So the two areas where I want to talk about in terms of rewards and downside. So, what is the reward for learning to or pursuing those questions I asked you earlier? What's the reward for you if you get to know yourself? Well, the first one and most important is it's actually been proven by peak performers mainly, guys. And I posted a short video on this on Facebook on Start Results Facebook page. Is that most people who know themselves tend to have an overall higher self-esteem. Okay, why? Because they know themselves, and so therefore they don't really get feel attacked by a lot of other things in the external market. But here's the downside of not knowing yourself. So I've talked about this, and we can do an assessment test called which we have on our coaching program, but we do an assessment on neuroticism. And what comes up for that is there's two sides to neuroticism. There's neuroticism positive, which is a low neuroticism, and these people with low neuroticism tend to be calmer, tend to be more well balanced and emotionally stable. People with high neuroticism tend to be very reactive, tend to be very moody and emotionally negative. So if you see yourself as being a little bit more anxious, fearful, and negative in terms of how you deal with things, then you really have to ask yourself the question, do I know myself well enough? This is a very straightforward way of thinking about it. And obviously the consequence of high neuroticism, guys, is you tend to be living predominantly in negative emotions, which are not going to serve you. And nobody likes that. But more importantly, nobody likes to be around people who are like that. So really, really check yourself on that. Okay. So here's a couple of things we can do in terms of a workshop. So describe how you perceive yourself in the following situations over the past. Yeah. So first, with your significant other, at work, with your kids or team, in a social situation, or with strangers, how do you perceive yourself when it came to how you were showing up in that particular situation? Yeah, were you aware of yourself in these particular situations with these people, or were you reactive? Number two, is that who I really see myself being in the future? So let's just say you were showing up as a negative person all the time, or complaining about the government, or complaining about your spouse, complaining about your business, whatever it is that you're anxious about. If that's how you're showing up with your social acquaintances, is that the person that you see yourself being in the future? If the answer is no, stop it. Okay, that's a simple answer to that, guys. Next, how would my future self look, feel, and behave differently in these situations? So again, if you're on my program, at least the coaching one, you start to ask yourself this question, and you start to realize, for me at least, that it's one thing to focus on your problems and your weaknesses in the current situation, guys. It's another thing for me to ask you the question, who is the future person you want to be in the future that's running this, say, multi-million-dollar business, or leading a team, or a significant life, etc., etc. That person in the future, would they be showing up as a complainer in the present? The answer is no. So my recommendation is, start to describe yourself in at least three positively inspiring words. So mine, for example, the quick one is live, love, legacy. These three words mean so much to me because I've had to ask myself, how do I want to show up with people? I want to show up where people feel I'm engaged in life, I'm engaged in their conversations with them as best as possible most of the time. So this is a person I want to be in the future. So guess what? I bring that into the present and I start practicing that in all my significant social situations. Why? Because I know myself enough that those things are important. Does that make sense when it comes to clarity for self? So, what is it for you in terms of words that can sum you up in your best future self? Okay, so I'd really like you to journal this down and just write down three words that can best describe you. And it doesn't matter what they are, but at least these words should be some sort of lamppost for you to be able to try and aspire to live to in the present. Okay, next is, why are those words meaningful to you? Because guys, they have to mean something to you. There's no point just copying my words or copying some other words out there. These slogan three words is floating around in a lot of platforms these days, but they have to mean something to you. If they don't and you can't live by them, then best you find something else. Okay, and lastly, once you find these words, I recommend that you do this last action step. Is go into your phone, pop out the alarm system bells. You can put triggers, and maybe several times a day. Yeah, that's what I do, but that might be a bit neurotic for you guys. But a couple of times a day, just put these words so they can remind you to live in those words as it pops up. So maybe 3 times a day, you put an alarm, it brings up. You got to ask yourself, in this moment, are you living? For example, in this moment, are you loving, or are you leaving a good legacy? Okay, so it's really, really helpful. So the second area where you can explore to seek more clarity for yourself. So let's imagine you're feeling uncomfortable, you're feeling anxious. Then you can look back into your social situations and ask yourself, because peak performers, guys, have a clear intention about how they want to treat other people. This is very, very important. And because one of them is in high situation awareness, peak performers have high situation awareness. This means in every situation that matters, they know who they want to be and how they want to interact with others. So what does that mean? They don't go to a party expecting to have a good time. They go to a party to bring a good time. Does that make sense? So one of the things you guys probably always hear me say and encourage is bring the joy. Just go and bring the joy. That's your choice. But what do most of us do? We go to parties, we expect to be entertained. We go to parties, we expect someone else to make us happy. We go to parties expecting someone else to talk to us. This is not peak performance, guys, because then that means you have low situational awareness. You're not in control of what you're expecting to experience. So this comes down to the second point, which is social intelligence. It's also what I would say, I might have a little bit of autism on this one, but when I catch it, I try and fix it. But there are some situations where I meet some people come into a room, let's just say a couple's been arguing, and then they don't have social intelligence enough to feel into those situations and be appropriate. Okay? Well, the other way to put it is this: if you're coaching someone and you're not checking in whether they're asking for your help, then you're not being socially intelligent enough by showing up and vomiting your content on them and they're not ready to receive it. Does that make sense? So here's a couple of questions to ask yourself. Let's find out whether this is common practice in your life. Number one, before you went into your last meeting, did you think about how you wanted to interact with each person in that meeting? This is so important because some of us, what do? We gravitate towards the most comfortable people in the room. And we're missing out on the opportunities to connect with other people that might be different to us, or at least perceptually, I think that's a word. Next, before your last phone call, did you think about the tone you would choose to use with the other person? So you can probably hear this is not a phone call, this is a deep dive, but I try and always come into a deep dive with as much of high intention energy that I can muster, because this is where I want to be practicing in terms of controlling my situational, my social situation. The third, on your last night out with your partner or friend, did you set an intention for the energy you wanted to create? I'm very big on this, guys. Energy is probably by far one of the most important indicators that can help you influence people. But most of us show up at the end of the day exhausted. I'm definitely to blame in this. When I was in a long-term relationship, I can't tell you how many times I'd just walk through the door because I'm trying to finish the day and I've had a big crazy day at the office or wherever. But the reality is that was not serving my partner and my spouse at that time. Yeah. So what we all need to do, and yes, it is hard work, but we are advanced learners, is we have to make an intention to bring energy into the connection that we have. regardless of what time it is. Why? Because at the end of the day, we get to benefit from that. And obviously, the person feels appreciated. And again, it's situational awareness. It shows that you still have energy and time and interest in the people that you love. Okay? So I really recommend you do that. So next, when were you dealing with the last conflict? So when you were dealing with the last conflict, did you think about your values and how you wanted to come across to the other person when you talk to them? I'm not too good at this sometimes. So, very, very recently, I had a bit of a conflict situation with someone, and let's just say I could have done a lot better. So, as much as I'm teaching you and researching this, I was like, oh my God, this is so true. I really have to be clear. I know my top three values so well, but I know the places where I usually have conflict with people is around these top three values. So, I'd like to just encourage you right now, write down what you think are your top three values, because chances are you spend time on that, you spend money on it, and you argue about it. Okay, so once you know what those are, try and then come back to this question about the last conflict situation that you had. Did you come with some intention of maintaining those high values that you say you are, like authentic or integrity or whatever you say you think you are? But are you then helping bringing that standard with the other person and making them feel appreciated about it? In most cases, all of us have room for improvement, right? Next, do you actively think about how to be a better listener, how to generate positive emotions with others, how you can be a good role model? This is so big for me. I could say maybe this quarter of the year, I'd say I'm listening a lot more than I used to. So maybe I'd give myself a 7. That's how bad I used to be. But last year, guys, I'd probably give myself a 4. I could have listened a lot more and spoken a lot less. But being a coach, you have information, you're in the business of doing things like this, you can get really trapped in sharing information. And sometimes that information, guys, is unsolicited and unwarranted or unwanted by people because it's just not the right time, they're not ready to listen, and or maybe you yourself are a walking contradiction. So I put myself in that box and I can say I can definitely listen more. But here's what it does: it allows you to generate positive emotions for the other person and encouraging them to share more, which actually connects more and then makes you more of an influential role model. Hope that really helps you. So here's something for the advanced learners now. So again, first was the beginner, but if you're an advanced learner, this is something you can do extra. Okay, so how can you be a person and a leader in the next upcoming situation? Advanced learners, between normal people and advanced learners, as advanced learners, guys, are proactive. So I always try and go, how can I do this next time better? I got an interaction, can I come up with more positivity? So what will the other person need? How can you say preempt what you think the other person needs to hear, see, or do, or feel that you can bring to the table as soon as possible, even before you meet them? Next, what kind of mood and tone do you want to set? As you probably know with me, I'm always trying to set a high energy tone and expectation. Why? That's just one of the areas where I really want to excel in life. So, what is it for you in terms of tone do you set before you meet people versus just trying to get there and figure it out? Yeah. So, write down each person's name in your immediate family and team now, and then imagine that in 20 years each person is describing why they love and respect you. Because notice, when people say they love and respect you, it's not necessarily because of who you are, but who you were with them. This is really, really powerful. So each person could maybe say 3 things out of the list of your family and team, could say 3 things about you to summarize the interactions they had with you in your life. What would be the 3 things that they would say? I can tell you, for some of us, you may not be aware of this. We might say we want to be authentic, we want to be happy, we want to be confident, but in reality, the way we showed up for people is we were complainers, we were fearful, we were scarcity mindset, we were judgmental, we were emotionally unstable, we were argumentative, we were self-righteous. Think about these words, because something most of us do, guys, is we're so trapped in the intellectual conversations of who or whatever face we've put on for ourselves or who we think we are in social situations, when in reality people are judging us by what we do. People are judging us by how we behave. So I really want you to take this seriously if you're in the deep dive, if you're an advanced learner and you want to get to the next level. Some of us just don't get to the next level because who we think we are and who we show up to be in social situations is completely different. My suggestion is to follow the quote that says, talk is cheap. Talk is cheap. Yeah, so I hope that kind of slaps some of you whenever this meets you. Look, I'm not here to be mean or anything, but again, this is for the advanced learners. This is for the top 15% of people who want to live a great life and become role models. That's the person I'm talking to. And if this kind of hits you in the way that it should, which is like you feel a little bit of a stab in the heart, then that says to me you want to grow and you want to be different. So I really recommend you start looking at how you're showing up consistently with other people, and then watch the words you said in the previous exercise about who you think you are, the top 3 meaningful words, because it's your behavior is what people are going to judge you by, not your intentions. Okay, so next time you're with each of those people, this is a good opportunity, guys, for you to demonstrate those 3 words. Show up with energy, show up with integrity in terms of action, right? Show up with courage. Take those bold moves that you said you would. Yeah? And then this can help people also improve themselves and challenge you and other people to live better lives. I really welcome you to this because this will really bring back the quality in your relationships. Yeah? So next is clarity about skill. And I love this glass maker, because some of these things, guys, just come with practice. So what can we assess about skills? So peak performance, guys, get very clear about the skills sets they need to develop in the present moment. And the best way to do that first is to look at you yourself in the future winning. Let's just say you want to have a successful business. You want to be letting it run by itself so you can make money while you're sleeping. I hear this all the time. Well, if that's true, you have to first build the business that has a great team, that has great leadership, that has great systems, and then you can walk away from that business, sell it, or whatever you want to do. So if this is going to take you, let's just say 3 years, can you see that you need to start identifying some of the skills that are needed to own a business like that can earn the right for you to walk away from it? So those skills of that future leader that you are going to be, a person that might be punctual, a person that might be courageous, a person that takes bold risks, a person that invests in their team, etc., etc., etc. That person then has to identify the key skills needed to operate a business at that level. Okay, so once you operate a business at that level, then you have to now get obsessive about developing those skills today. You go for the coaches, you go and spend the time, you stop doing the things that weren't serving you and start doing the things that were. So here's a bit of a workshop on this. So think about your PFI, and I'll talk more about this as we go, but this is your primary field of interest. This is the area where you're passionate about most, that you want to pursue. And write down the 3 skills that make people successful in that field. So let's just say you want to be a future business owner. Well, you got to find out who are the top entrepreneurs in the world. Let's just go with maybe say Elon Musk, etc., etc. Then you gotta go, well, what skills makes Elon Musk very successful? I can tell you one of the most obvious ones is that guy's a great sales guy. He just promotes Tesla cars and everything like it was just going out of fashion. Okay, so if you're not good at sales and you want to be a successful business person, you realize that most successful business, in fact, all successful business people have great sales skills. This is not sales like Wolf of Wall Street. This is genuine, authentic interest in being out there to sell their product, service, or idea with big belief. Yeah. So if you're not doing this is a skill you need to learn. And guess what? You got to do some work on that. That's an example. So under each skill, write down what you will do to develop it. So what will you read? So in that case, will you read some sales books? Number 2, what will you practice? Will you come to maybe a couple of our workshops? Will you go to some other opportunities for you to practice selling and closing some business? Number 3, are you going to get a coach? Guys, you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. You can't see the picture when you're in the frame. So you have to get a coach who can observe you and then can help you get out of these places you've got yourself in a rut in, which is your comfort zone. Next is going actually for training and being able to set a date when you're going to get that coach, when you're going to read that book, etc. Because if you don't set that deadline, guys, it's not going to happen. Next, set up a plan to develop those skills. put into your calendar, and stay consistent. So for me, just a perfect example, I'm working on two skills at the moment still. And every Sunday from 9 to 12, I am learning about it, researching about it, watching YouTubes about it, doing everything I can about it. And I am not hanging out with anybody because that is my personal set curriculum and I try and stick to it as best as possible. So now think about your PFI, which is your primary field of interest, and write down these three skills that you would need in order to succeed in that field 5 to 10 years from now. This is a very different conversation because right now, let's just say back in the days, everybody was jumping onto Facebook marketing, etc., etc. I think the world is shifting and things are changing, and people are now not responding to all those sponsorship ads on the right hand side of Facebook. You know what I mean? So in 5 to 10 years, that may not be the right way to do sales and marketing in the same example. So you got to ask yourself the question, what can I learn that's new or different and that might become more relevant in 5 to 10 years? This is very strategic thinking. Okay, next is service. Now, service, guys, I love this picture because I find service to be a very tricky situation and I've experienced it in both areas. I think service in general should be about you being able to acknowledge you are on higher ground and then being able to help someone who is on lower ground. So what does that mean? Can you really pull someone to a higher place when you yourself are in a low place? The answer is no. Well, it's possible, but it's harder. And so the authenticity, the integrity of your intent to help is actually double-sided because you need the same help that you're offering. Is this making sense? So I would really like you now, particularly if you're in the coaching industry, to start to ask yourself the question, is where I'm trying to take those people to higher ground a place that I am already masterful in? Because if the answer is yes, then you should be having the demonstration of those results or fruits of your labor in that area. So I'll give you a personal example. I probably started coaching business coaching and I was trying to get senior executives from banks and all these places because everyone told me that's where the money is, trying to coach those guys, making hundreds of millions of dollars, some of them billions of dollars. And I'm trying to say, hey, come and get business coaching from me. The reality was I was not on higher ground. And therefore, a lot of the context, content, and intent came from a very scarce space. Is this making sense? And you guys know what I'm saying. When you're getting, say someone wants to coach you on life coaching, but you're talking to them and you're like, man, you barely know how to wipe your nappy, right? So you can feel it when people are not coming from higher ground. They lack the three things that I mentioned earlier. So it's not really serving them and it's not really serving you. So my suggestion is always try and serve people from a place where you have come from and succeeded in. So here's a couple of things that peak performance people do in three areas of why when they're not doing it, they start feeling confused. Yeah, they're not assessing these three areas. This is what I'm trying to say. So number one is relevance. The day you start to not feel relevant in your service of your business is the day you start to get confusion. Think about it. So the best way to ask yourself that question again is, are you relevant in your solution, your service, your idea at this current moment in time? And if the answer is you're not sure, you better go back and start asking yourself some questions around the self, asking yourself some questions around your social situations in terms of your responsibility of how you're showing up. But secondly, are the people you're trying to help seeing you as relevant? Because I can't tell you how many people are forcing people into becoming clients, and yet these guys are suspects. They don't even value what you're offering. Perfect example is, let's just say you're selling water and you go and try and sell water to someone that has a 20-liter tank in the back of the house. You're not very relevant to them at that moment because they already have enough water. Same person though, put them in a desert situation and you have the same bottle of water to offer them. There you're going to be feeling very relevant, but number two is they will perceive you as relevant as well because they're going to die if they don't of thirst if they don't drink. Yeah, makes sense. So differentiation, this doesn't mean that you have to be different to other people. This is actually more talking about, are you really genuinely feeling like you're making a difference? And when you feel like you're not making a difference, and I've had this even currently in some situations with some clients who've maybe fallen out of love with the process of building a business, and then it just doesn't feel like any coaching will make a difference to them. Those are the times I usually say, look, thank you very much. Obviously, I'm not serving you in the right way, or I can't reach you in whatever way. Is it okay if we put the coaching on hold? Go live some more life. Come back after you've tried a job a few more times or whatever, and then decided whether you really want to take this necessary risk, because again, startups are just riskier by nature, higher riskier by nature. So if it's not really something you're prepared to do, maybe I'm not going to make a difference for you right now. Does that make sense? And this is a very difficult but humbling conversation to have. But you can't have it if you also start to feel like you're not making a difference. You know, but if you continue to do that, it's going to start creating confusion for you. Can you see the connection? So I hope you can really start to assess yourself there. And then the third, guys, is excellence. Are you feeling like you want to excel, not just for yourself, but for the people that you're serving? When you do, you feel clear because you're constantly seeking ways of adding more value. But when you're not seeking excellence and you're just running through the motions because everything's kind of good, remember what I said. The enemy of a great life is a good one. So if you're going for greatness, you're always going for excellent. You will never settle. You will never settle. And this is the difference between peak performers and the average Joe. Peak performers are satisfied in the moment, but they're always seeking excellence, and that's that edge that gives them the industry leader status. Yeah. So, are you feeling like you're seeking excellence for your clients and for yourself in your particular field of business or interest? Because if you are, then you probably won't be feeling as confused. But if you are not, chances are confusion is around the corner. So you have to up it in these three areas. I hope that really helps. So here's a couple of questions to answer. How to add the most value to those that you serve? How are you suggesting? What are the 3 steps, 6 steps, 10 steps of ways you can add value in each experience with your clients? And if you're getting coaching from me, you know we work through this and break this down more specifically, but then it also becomes very clear and easy to then measure your progress and also measure and assess your clients to see what they're getting. Number 2, how to inspire those around you. Are you acting like a role model? Are you also inspiring them to want to keep working with you? I can't tell you how many people I work with, guys, that are really looking to get more money in their business, and yet they're forgetting that their clients are constantly watching whether they themselves believe and are sold out to the business. The best compliment you can get yourself is where people go, oh my God, you're so passionate about your business. Oh my God, you're constantly selling your business. Yes, promote it all the time. Why? Because this is actually inspiring to the people that are looking for you. Number 3, how do you make that difference? If I were to book a session with you if you're a coach, if I were to have an experience of your product or service, would I have the before after effect? Because if I don't have the before after effect, which creates the contrast, you're not really making a difference. So are you very clear about how you go about doing this? Or what are the steps that you do that? This is very, very important. Next is the feelings. I love this one. So, have you ever seen Winter Olympics where these snowboarders jump into these crazy fucking pipes, shoot off the curve of one of them up into their backflip, and then land somewhere 1 million kilometers later? I'm just exaggerating, but you know what I'm trying to say, guys. These guys are fucking nuts, right? But why do they do that? Should be another question you should ask yourself. And they've broken their bones over the course of period practicing and training for this moment. I would like to predict, only because I used to be an athlete at a top level, that sometimes we engage in risky endeavors because we've already decided what it's going to feel like. Yeah? Think about what I just said. We've already decided that we're going to feel exhilarated. We're going to feel victorious. We're going to feel courageous. We're going to feel like a champion at the end of that endeavor. Not during it, at the end. So we will put ourselves in fearful situations. We'll put ourselves, guys, in fearful situations in the present. What has that got to do with business? Everything. Because so many of us don't demonstrate tremendous degrees of emotional intelligence because we are reacting on our emotions in the current situation. So let me give you some definitions of the difference. And this will separate what we call a champion or a warrior versus an average fellow person. And I'm not saying average in a demeaning way. I'm just saying these are two distinct different people. But peak performers fit into the second category. So emotions, guys, generally are instinctive, automatic, they're physical, they're primal. This generates, it's just an emotion. You put yourself in a situation, you start to feel fearful. If you put yourself on the edge of a building at the top of the side, it doesn't matter whether you jumped off that building, whatever, this adrenaline rush kicks in because your body says to you, hey brother, hey sister, you are putting me in danger here. This is a dangerous situation. This is a risky situation. So in business, it's the same. Imagine yourself jump into a business, you put all your money into a business and you don't even know if it's going to work. This will bring up some fears. So in some situations, if you've been in my tribe, you know I'm constantly playing games with my tribe members, guys. I put them in some uncomfortable situations. Like one of them recently, I invited them to an African party. Most of them are Westerner or non-African, let's just say, and they've never been in a social situation like that where people are like no space, you know, they're in your private space, in your face, spitting distance, talking to you. Number two, it's high energy, loud, everybody's having a great time, but it's very confrontational to non-Westerners. Why? Because Westerners are reserved by nature. Okay, now I can flip it around and bring an African to the West. It'll be the same situation. It's just uncomfortable. So guess what comes up? Fear. Guess what comes up? A little bit of uncomfortability. This is normal. But here's my point. This is what would happen every time we're outside our comfort zone. But here's a couple of others that are more recent that people don't understand are the same. You can get angry. You can feel sad when you're alone. You get relief if someone then takes you from that situation and puts you into a positive or more comfortable one. You feel relief. But here's one that's so interesting. If you spend enough time with people who don't put you in an uncomfortable situation, you actually start to love them. Did you know that? Isn't that curious? So what does that mean? We don't really have to do too much for people to love us because it's biologically or primal for us to have a consequence of love with people that make us feel comfortable. Isn't that interesting? But what does that say then? It says, I think, we're spending way too much time interpreting love when the reality is it's a natural way of being. But that does not correlate to leadership and peak performance in life. The most fulfilled, emotionally strong people in life, guys, take, listen to this, the negative feelings like fear, anger, sadness, or the positive natural primal reactions of life like amusement, relief, and love. Treat them both as the same enemy because they're both not true. And then they interpret that situation to generate a desired outcome of growth, victorious, championship, courage, confidence. Is this making sense? I hope you're getting this. So what am I saying? I'm saying that between a bad situation happening in your life or your business, let's just say someone says you're crap or they attack you or they make you feel unsafe. Yeah? Your body will naturally create an emotion of fear. Being attacked as a woman, being attacked as a black person, being attacked in your business, being called a loser, being isolated in an uncomfortable situation. The body will react negatively. That's just part of its survival mechanism. But a true champion, a true CEO, a true leader in their life goes into a mental interpretation of that emotion instantly and says, I am going to choose to overcome this emotion because it's going to grow me as a person. And so that next time I'm in this situation, I will perform at a peak performance level. Is this making sense? That is where the control is. So there is a gap between your emotions and your feelings. I hope I'm making that clear. This is so huge. I'm going to do an online course just on this. Is that we are in complete control of our feelings, but we have no control of our emotions. But most people are living a reactive life because they're letting their emotions control them when they should live an empowered life of interpreting those emotions and deciding how they want to feel about those emotions, which allows them to act consistently over time and makes them more of a leader versus the other person that just spins and gets disempowered and ends up paralyzed and confused. Is that making sense? I really hope you get this, guys. Go for feelings. So here's a workshop on a couple of questions. The emotions I've been experiencing a lot of lately are: have you been really sad for the last couple of weeks, months, years? You have to really honor that and ask yourself, is that true? You've been living in a reactive mode. Number two, the areas of life where I'm not having the feelings I want to are: I wasn't having great feelings about my business. I was feeling guilty. Why? I wasn't working my business hard enough, guys. You need to think about that. So if I wanted to feel different, I had to then create different interpretations of that feeling. Yeah? The feelings I want to experience more of in my life include: I want to bring joy in my life. I want to represent possibilities in my life. I want to help other people, represent opportunities that we can really make a difference in this life. These are the experiences, emotions, and what I decided I wanted. But guess what? Then I had to go into being like the Winter Olympics person I just showed the picture of go into that uncomfortable situation called taking risks in business so that I can pop out on the other side victorious with hopefully a business such as that is a human plus that I can be proud of, that my son can be proud of. Is this making sense? But I had to go into that pipe and experience the fears, the anxieties, the concerns, the overwhelm. But I didn't let those things paralyze me. So are you going into those? Are you engaging into those emotions and taking control of them? That's basically what I'm saying there. The next time I feel a negative emotion come up, the thing I'm going to say to myself is, for me, guys, it's so simple. I go in, even you don't know this because I'm an introvert, some of you don't know, but I can go into a situation and remember the introvert and the bad traumatic public speaking events I used to have back in the days where I couldn't even remember my name. People laughed at me, okay, called me unprofessional, etc., etc. But I always say to myself, Aaron, okay, who do you choose to show up as in this moment? Are you going to be a champion and a victor or a victim? I always say, I'm a victor. Okay, act like it. And I go, this is all going on in my head in the first couple of minutes when I'm grabbing that mic, totally feeling like pissing myself. Why? Because I still have the fear of public speaking. Till today, still. But that's not a bad thing because I let that emotion go through me, but I choose to feel different about it. Okay? So I hope that helps you. Meaningfulness, the last one. Oh my goodness, guys. I love this photo for so many reasons. Some of you see this and you see a homeless person. You see birds all over and it smells and probably looks like shit. The fact is, I see myself. And I don't know if some of you know my story, but I was homeless for a whole year. I was a bum. This guy even has way too many property possessions than I did. But you know what was so funny? It's in the moments I had very little or nothing were the moments I found the biggest meaning in life, about the things that really mean a lot. So here's an interesting quote. It says, unhappiness is not knowing what we want and killing ourselves to get it. I can't tell you that before I got to that homeless situation, I was earning a lot of money. I was living in a place that everybody envied, or so I thought, and driving cars that I thought would impress people, trying to keep up with the Joneses that I didn't even like. And I was killing myself doing it. Crazy disconnected with my African community and myself. And I was the most miserable I've ever been. Then flip it to the other side, I lose it all, collapse my identity on the success I had. When I lost that, I lost my friends, lost my marriage. And then I had time to start asking myself questions like, what do I really value? This is where some of those questions came from, guys. What actually makes me happy? Who do I want to be from now on? What have I learned from my past in terms of materials, delayed gratification? Life-changing. So peak performers can do almost anything they set their heart and mind to. But not every mountain, guys, is worth climbing. I'm telling you now because I've been there. I was climbing the mountain of the Australian dream, 2.4 kids, it was 6 figures. I think I was making seven then. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. 7 figures, having barbecues on weekends, hanging out in these prominently great places. But guys, I forgot that I was an African man making a difference in a Western country. I forgot what it was like to be happy. I forgot who I was because I was chasing or so desperate to fit in. So that mountain, I climbed it, but by the time I got to the top, or what people perceived as the top, I had really sold my soul, so to say. Yeah? So one of the ways my coach puts it is this way: be careful who you become in pursuit of what you want. Oh, this is so rich. I really recommend you ask yourself that question. So I'm not telling you that your business is wrong and don't do it, go become a nun and live in the mountains. I'm just saying we better pick the business that once it's completed, you're going to be happy with it. And these are the next last questions. So what differentiates peak performers from others is their critical eye in figuring out, what is going to be meaningful in their life and experience. This critical eye is something I find doesn't sit in people pleasing. So some of you will know I had a session with an executive client, guys. These are people who have more staff, they've got big businesses. And I was talking to one of the CEOs about this, and they said, Aaron, sometimes you can be very opinionated. I'm like, yeah, totally, but not always that it's the right thing to do. But it's this critical eye I have, okay, about really asking myself, if I believe what this person is telling me, and I go get the results that they got, am I going to be fulfilled in life? Is this going to mean something to me? So I'll give you a straight up answer on this, guys. Money doesn't make me happy at all, but it affects everything that does. So can you notice by having that way of thinking is I always go after end goals, which is this is what I want to experience. This is who I want to become. These are the people I want to be doing it with. Not people by specifics, but the type of people I want to do it with. And then this is what it's going to cost me to do that experience. And then I work my way backwards because I still have to use money to do it, right? This is just being critical. And I will resist, I will argue, I will cut out anything that doesn't serve me in those areas because I've spent the time to do that. Do you have that end goal picture clear enough for yourself? Really hope that makes a difference. Number 3, they spend more time doing things that they find meaningful and things that make them happy. Guys, I can't tell you how many times people tell me how I should live my life. Aaron, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this, you should do that, you should do that. And the more popular you become, or public figure, whatever you want to call it, that I am these days, whatever that means, people have opinions for you. And if you start to listen to those people without questioning yourself with that critical eye, like I said, and go, well, is that person living a meaningful life? And do I want their life? Most times people are telling you, projecting the things that make them unhappy onto you, and they're too busy trying to figure out your life when they should be figuring out theirs. But obviously they haven't done the deep dive. Now that you have, is they haven't gone through step number 1, is know yourself. But once you know yourself, you may not need to be married. You may not need to have $1 million like everybody's selling. You may not even need to have $100,000. Maybe $50,000 a year in sales revenue profit for you is a great, meaningful life, and it's going to make you so happy because you have so much more freedom, less responsibilities than some of us crazy people who want to go global. Guys, that comes with responsibilities. It comes at a price. But here's my point. I know myself well enough that I'm prepared to pay that price because it doesn't even feel like a price. It feels like an opportunity to serve more people. And by doing that, I'm feeling I'm living a meaningful life now. I am feeling very happy in pursuit of those goals. Very, very different way to how I used to build my business. But my point is, I don't look over my shoulder to see what other people are doing. I go within and ask myself, what are my 3 legacy words that I want to be remembered by? And remember, one of them was legacy. That's part of that. So what is it for you? This is so, so important. So meaningful, guys, comes down to a few things. Number 1, enjoyment of your tasks of work. Let me explain that. There are some things in my business I absolutely love, like coaching, creating content, training, writing, researching. These are my things. I love them. But there are other parts of my business not so enjoyable that I have to do, okay? Like administration. So what am I meaning? Yes, I have a team now of people doing it, but be careful delegating by abdication. When in the early days, I did it all. I did it all, guys, and I started to enjoy the process. So those tasks were enjoyable because I saw how they fit into the rest of the business. Number two, alignment of personal values with the work. You guys, I hope, can feel I am aligned with who I am as a person. I have three top values. Are you ready for them? Write them down as a reference point. Number one, consistency. I value consistency. I want to be more consistent. I want other people to be more consistent with me. Number two, extra mile. I want to go the extra mile for you. We're near the end of this deep dive, and I'm more passionate now than I hope I was at the beginning of the deep dive, because this is a very important topic, and I've stumbled onto something I think that is extraordinarily going to help you feel less confused and move into more clarity by doing some of these things. Okay? But I'm aligned with this work, so guess what? I don't feel tired doing it. Number three, fulfillment from the outcomes of the work. Am I going to be proud of myself by the time I finish this deep dive so that we can record it, so that we can send it out to the world and help more people with it? Answer, absolutely fuck yes. But have I been in a situation in the past where I built businesses, guys, got sales, got paid a lot of money, and I was not proud of the work that I did because it probably made my clients and other people and the world worse off? The answer is yes. I'm not proud of that, but I know the difference now. So there are things like working and building a human plus company will make me feel fulfilled once the business is completed. My coaching business is one of them. My organic cold pressed juice company, we're working with local communities, governments, and recycling plastic, all that kind of stuff. That's going to help me feel very, very, very fulfilled when it's completed. But I'll never sell out again. I've done it before. So my question to you is, if you've never had that experience, take my word for it at least. I hope you can take my word for it. Is you have to ask yourself, once you've done everything, got the money in, if it's just been this automation selling cheap supplements online from China without really checking the quality of them and making people have those pills that they can just doesn't do anything for them, are you going to be happy with yourself? If the answer is no, take more time and find more meaningful work, because you can still make great money and love what you do. Trust me on that. So here's a couple of workshop questions. How do you know when you're doing something meaningful? What does it feel like? Do you know? For me, time disappears. For me, I never feel like I've done enough, yeah, for that particular experience. I think I can always learn more and do more. I hope you feel that. But it feels amazing. Oh my God. Amazing. And I've been doing this, guys, for 5 years. But I always sometimes feel like guilty. Like, is this really possible? That it feels like it was just the first day I started today in terms of excitement. Yeah? Next, if you had to choose between two good projects, how would you go about choosing the one that would mean the most to you? How do you measure that? Is it by people? Is it by money? Is it by the environment? Is it by a feeling of well-being for you? What is it? How do you know when you're doing something that isn't bringing meaning in your life? So when do you start to know when things maybe have finished their season and it's time to move on? I'm getting so good at this that I can feel and sense into people and go, okay, this person has shifted or the season's changed. I'm no longer making a difference in their life. Time for me to help them move on. This is very difficult sometimes because I meet some great people who I love coaching. We have a great relationship, great connection. But the fact is, in terms of the professional aspect, they've moved on emotionally. And when that happens, guess what? I know what it feels like when I'm not adding value to them. And that's a sad feeling, but it's also an exciting one, because remember what I said. Sorry, it's a sad emotion, right? Remember that? Because I love them. Remember that? But I feel the best thing that's going to empower us is to just put the program on hold or let them go and try different things and come back. I know most people in the coaching industry don't do this because of whatever. I don't mind taking that risk because I believe in karma, and I believe that everyone needs to get what they need to get in that moment in life, and it doesn't mean forever. Things can change. So I don't mind letting people go because, again, I know I'll get the right person that's in the right season ready to get my help. Do you implement some of these systems in place in your business? I really hope you do, particularly if you're in the service industry. Next, at the end of your life, how would you know whether you have lived a meaningful life. How are you going to know? How are you going to measure it? It's so important for you to answer that now. And it doesn't matter if you're 18, 40, 60, or 70. Trust me, this question comes up because there's a book, I think Confessions of the Dying or something, where they talked about things on their deathbed. Nobody ever said they wanted to work harder in the office, but everybody said some parts of their vocation were meaningful. So don't hide away from the work, because we are here to work, but we're not here to work and be grounded. We're here to create something meaningful. And you can do that in all aspects of life. The activities that I currently do that bring me the most meaning are, what are they? Mine, I can't tell you. Running, meditation, connecting with authentic people who want to make a difference, entrepreneurs who give a shit, coaching, writing, research. I love learning, travel. These things really make a difference. So guess what? I just build a whole business around it. You can too. The activities or projects that I should stop doing because they're not bringing me a sense of meaning are, I can't tell you honest enough, and I don't know where this is going to meet you guys, but if you don't mind me sharing something really personal, um, recently I had to let go of a very significant relationship in my life. It was so difficult because it was good. But the reality was, it wasn't giving us the sense of meaning we both wanted for the future people we wanted to be. And so we had to call it off. Can you imagine how difficult that was? Because what do most people do? They end it once it's toxic. This is not how peak performers behave. Next, if I was going to add new activities that bring me more meaning, the first ones I would add would be, this is courage, guys, because sometimes you can't really add something unless you get rid of something, because some other things are not complementary. So what am I saying? When I let go of some of these significant relationships that were good but not right for me, it opened up so much space for me to give more in other areas and then allow more new opportunities. And I'm telling you now, it was the best decision I could have made. Why I'm living a more meaningful life. That's how you know. But it takes courage in the moment, guys, because it hurts and it takes a lot of work. So I hope that makes a difference for you. So here's some fun formulas for you. You want to learn, test it out. I think it's pretty cool. You want to learn how to have personal satisfaction? Here's how you do it. First, assess your passion. What are you passionate about? What areas are going to help you grow? This is around your skills. And where can you contribute? If you can add these 3 areas, passion, growth, contribution, you're more likely going to feel personally satisfied. But this big thing about meaning, which is the last part, is it's about enthusiasm. Are you enthusiastic in those areas or activities or business projects that you're in? Are you feeling connected to yourself, to others, to the environment, to the universe, whatever you're into, spirituality? Is that connection there? Number 3, is there satisfaction at the end of the day when you do these activities? Are you feeling satisfied when those jobs or projects are completed, like I'm feeling at the end of this deep dive now? I'm really proud of this. I did a lot of research on this one. And is it coherent? Remember what the definition of clarity is. Can you translate that? Is it hitting you in your physiology, your psychology? Your energy levels are going up, your competency going up. Can you then apply it and teach and role model for others? If you can transmute that, then you're coherent. I wish for you that you can have these 4 areas. So next is obviously, how can you then apply yourself to be able to continuously work on these 6 areas? Again, it always comes back to habits. Seeking habit is one of the things we were talking about today, but can you see that you can still generate energy in these 6 areas of clarity? You can still raise your necessity to look and ask yourself these questions and really do those activities and questions that I asked you to do in your journal today. Raise your necessity, do it now. Are you gonna maybe have some measurables out of 10 in these 6 areas so that you can start to increase productivity? How well do you know yourself? 0 to 10, 10 being you know yourself really well, 0 not too sure. Maybe say you score 7 today. In 90 days, do the test again and maybe score 7.5. That is progress. That's productivity. Next is influence others. Can you take what you've learned today about, let's just say, the difference between your emotions and your feelings, and go and talk to someone else about this and say, hey, listen, I've been reactive and primal. In fact, I thought I loved my partner, but the fact is they were just comfortable in my space, and so love came naturally. But what I want to do now is have a courageous, loving relationship with them, because I choose for us to be champions and leaders for ourselves and other people, and role models for other people in relationships. What a cool experience that would be. But that's you going back to try and influence the other person positively. Then you need to demonstrate courage around these things, because knowing yourself, guys, is much harder than trying to go figure someone else out. So many of us spend time trying to go figure other people out, when what we should do is spend time identifying if we're really emotionally intelligent. Because once you know that, trust me, you just become a certain person that can attract better people into your life. You really don't have to figure other people out. They see it. Trust me, they're not stupid. Okay? Then you gotta go through this process, guys. There's 4 stages of learning. First was unconsciously incompetent. You didn't know that there were maybe 6 areas of clarity. I didn't know until I did more research on it. But now that I'm conscious of it, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm competent at it. Yeah? So what I'm doing is I'm going to apply these 6 action habits and keep constantly going. Every time I feel confused, I'm going to look at these 6 areas of clarity and assess myself on which of these areas is where I'm feeling anxious, overwhelmed by, and then I'll apply some of those questions to gain coherence, to gain quality, and to gain intelligibility about those areas, yes, and then be able to execute them as courageous as I can, so that one day the future self will be unconsciously competent. Is this making sense? I hope you can really engage on that. So I want to leave you with this quote: your dream, purpose, or mission should never be made to bow down to your current limited human strengths. Yes, it's good for you to know yourself, guys, but it's more important for you to grow yourself to become the future leader that you've always wanted to be, by learning the skills of that person in the future today. Don't cop out on this. I want to say thank you very much for being attentive. I hope this clarity workshop has opened up some doors for you to think about and explore. And again, if you really, really want to get a workbook or something that can help you 10x some of these experiences, send us an email and we'll be able to give you what we call the 10x worksheet, and you can maybe work on that. It's valued at $49, but if you're on the deep dive, you get it complimentary. But if you don't, then I guess you have to become a member at the deep dive to do that. So just send us an email at operations@startresults.com. So that's operations with an S at startresults.com. Thank you so much for attending this, and look forward to